Today I'm replacing the blade spindle assembly on a FasTrak Mini Z that I purchased back in the spring of 2005. The spindle assembly holds the blade and sits right here on the tractor. These knobs right here cover the plate to access it. I added these knobs, they're normally just bolts here, but this makes it a lot easier to take this plate off. And then you can see you have a spindle here, pulley, and the spindle sits below that. So that's what I'm going to be replacing today. I replaced the one on the other side, on this side, which is underneath there. Can't really see that one, but when you take off a pulley, you can see the assembly. And the assembly looks like this. Here's a new one. The old one was all rusted out. So the assembly itself, when you look at this, the blade attaches to the bottom, and this goes through the frame, and then this top portion here connects. Your pulley sits on there, and then your belt turns the pulley and turns this whole assembly. So, you know, when you're like this, it spins freely. There's a bearing set in the top here, and there's a bearing set in the bottom here, which you can't see right here. So there's two sets of seal bearings that let this whole assembly turn. Now, what was happening on the left side of the tractor, on the other side, the far side, I already replaced that spindle assembly. The blades were cavitating and kind of screeching, and once I pulled that apart, you could see why. The old housing, these bearings were all rusted out, and some of the bearings weren't turning, and it was making a pretty loud noise. So if anybody has that type of issue, this is the easiest thing you can do, is buy one of these new housings. I bought this on eBay, and it costs around $50, which I thought was incredibly cheap. If you buy directly from a FasTrak dealership, you'll probably spend, you know, $140 for one of these. So I got two of them for $100, and you know, it's pretty easy to replace if you have, you know, air tools and whatnot. It makes it much easier, because the bolts that are on the original one that were on the far side were really rusted up good, and if you didn't have the air tools, that would have been really hard to get them off. So that helped out a lot. The one on this side I don't think is nearly as bad. The cover on this side is open, so when it sits on here like this, you can, you know, shoot your air in there with your blower, and this one really never gets that clogged up. The one on this side is covered on three sides, so the grass always gets stuck in there. So what I did recently was replace the bolts with these knobs. It makes it so much easier to unscrew the cover and take it off. And that way you can blow it out real easy, and then hopefully that spindle assembly won't rust out. But I still think I got pretty good life out of it since I bought the tractor back in 2005, and it's 2018 now. So I'll show you how to proceed, and it's not too bad. Alright, I have the tractor up on the stand, and I just dropped the blades off the bottom. Alright, I'm going to loosen this top spindle bolt, and I'm going to drop the deck by loosening this up. Okay, I dropped the deck enough that I can get the air gun in here. So here it goes. Alright, it's got it. Alright, so I loosened this up, but I didn't take it off yet because I'm going to disengage the belt by releasing the spring here. So you can just use like a vice grip or something like that. Pull on it and let that go easily, and then that'll let the belt come loose, and you can pull the belt, unscrew this top of the housing, and then pull that off, and the belt's loose, and there you go. This spindle assembly doesn't look nearly as bad as the one I replaced on the other side, but still going to replace it. You can see here, still turns. The other one was totally rusted out, and the bearings were actually screeching while the tractor was on. So we're going to drop this out next. The spindle assembly is removed. This is what it looks like with it off the frame. Here's the old spindle assembly. Let's see what that looks like. Still turns pretty freely. It's not that bad. And here's the new spindle assembly. You can see what that looks like. So we'll get that installed. Now when I purchased this, I purchased bolts the right size. I'll put them in the description what size everything is. Don't buy the bolts from Hustler. They're like super expensive. You can just get a similar size bolt from online, and I'll post the website I purchased those from, and we'll go from there. I'll show you what it looks like after I install it. Alright, I have the new spindle unit installed. Just going to tighten it up with the impact wrench. Alright, they're all snugged up. Now we're putting the pulley back on with the belt. Just wrap the belt around the pulley and then pull it into place, and it slides right down over the new shaft. Just hit that down like that. That's with the spring still loose. And then replace the washer and bolt. And we'll tighten that up with the impact wrench. Alright, I blocked up the deck just so I could screw back in this top screw here. This bolt. It just screws in through there. So the deck's lifted back up. Didn't have to do anything on this side. This is just loose. The chain will drop down and tighten up when we drop the deck, which I can do right now. Alright, it's all the way down. Belt's tight. Make sure you check the belt in the back of the unit. Make sure it hasn't come off back there, and then you can pull this string tight and bolt it back up. Alright, before you reattach the chain to the frame that pulls the spring and tightens all the belts up, just make sure it's still attached correctly in the back. Sometimes when you release the tension on the spring, it falls off the pulley in the back, so just make sure that's engaged before you tighten it up. The spring's back in place with the chain, everything's tight. Now we can put the cover back on. Here's the cover. You can see what it looks like before the cover's on. And there's with the cover. I'll put in the description where I got these handles. Most of these pulley units, the spindle units, are the same on a lot of the FasTrak, so this should help you even if you have, you know, commercial grade or as a regular FasTrak Z or the Mini. So hopefully it'll be helpful. And now all I got to do is replace the blade on the bottom, and we'll be done. I'm going to raise the deck up so I can put the blade back on. Just pull the... Alright, everything's back together, and I'm going to test out the blades. Alright, so that's 2 new spindle assemblies replaced, and actually those blades are relatively new too, so should be good. Thanks for watching.